Welcome everybody to the video version of Tales from the Jar Side, my newsletter. If you don't have time or interest in reading it, that's fine. I'll be happy to read it to you with extra stories and jokes and links and things like that. To give you an idea what the topics are this week, here's the newsletter. The title says Functional Interfaces in JUnit. It's a new YouTube video. Beauty from AssertJ. Yeah, I'll have to explain that. A live stream with Nate Shuda. Some AI tools and coding, which I'll talk about. An example with HTTP interfaces in the Spring framework. And the usual, somewhat extra random assortment of tweets and toots this week. The subtitle was, I was happy last week before I started petting some baby ducks, but now I'm feeling a little down. See, I remembered my instant rim shot this week. Okay, welcome fellow jarheads to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter, for the week of June 11th through 17th, 2023. Today is the 19th. In other words, I did it again. I got the date wrong. It's 11th through 18th. Oh my goodness. I mean, here I even put in a comment. Did you see that? I remembered to update the dates this week. Of course, I forgot last week. And here I updated the dates and miscounted. Yeah, okay. This week I taught my Mosquito and the Hamcrest Matchers course. I love the name of that course, even though we really don't spend much time on the Hamcrest Matchers. It's just that Mosquito and the Hamcrest Matchers sounds like some pop band from the 80s, like Katrina and the Waves or something like that. And it just seems funny to me. At any rate, we also did week 3 of my Spring and Spring Boot in 3 weeks course on the O'Reilly Learning Platform. I also did a No Fluff Just Stuff virtual workshop on the fundamentals of functional Java, streams, lambdas, method references, that sort of thing. So I had a lot of that going on last week. Was very active on YouTube. I had one long form video, one YouTube short, and a live stream as well. As we say every week, regular readers of and listeners to, and of course video viewers of this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than the average newsletter reader or viewer or listener. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe using the button in your newsletter. The button is also on the Substack page, but if I go to the YouTube channel, I think it's time for our weekly check-in. We are up to 394 subscribers. The videos this week actually helped a lot. I've got 77 videos on there apparently now, and I hope very much to break 400 this week. Wouldn't that be nice? Which is a completely meaningless but round number. So I'll let you know. Okay, back to the newsletter. So the biggest thing I did was this video on functional interfaces in JUnit 5. Now I had to do a brief review inside the video of what functional interfaces in Java are about, things like consumer and predicate and function and supplier, and then shift into how they work inside of JUnit. So I spent time on executable and throwing supplier, which are both from JUnit. And of course, supplier they use as well for lazy loading of error messages. That's the interface from Java. Executable is basically a runnable that throws an exception, or is declared to throw throwable, just like throwing supplier is basically a supplier that declares to throw throwable as well. If you're interested, feel free to have a look. I did take a chance here. I don't know if this is a good idea or not. Please let me know if you have an opinion. I put the QR code that I made the previous week in the corner of the thumbnail there. That's the QR code to the YouTube channel. And we'll see if that works or if anybody follows that. I'm not sure whether it's more distracting than it is useful. Again, if you have an opinion, please let me know. Okay, so I already told you basically what it was about. I will say the video was released Saturday morning. I finished it late Friday, and I just on a whim decided, you know what, I'm not going to release a video late in the evening on Friday night. Let me just schedule it for a release early Saturday morning and see if that makes any difference. Now, the statistics I hear from YouTube suggest that it might make a difference for the first 2 to 3 days, but after that, it doesn't matter what time of day you released it. Everybody who is going to see it is probably going to see it anyway, no matter what time you released it. So I released it at 8 a.m. Saturday morning, and it had about 85 views. Let me take a look now. Actually, let me finish this, which is very good for me. I hope it does. I hope it will do well as the work week begins too, but we'll see, with the acknowledgement that today, Monday, is actually Juneteenth, the date that commemorates the freeing of the slaves, except it's more like the date that the slaves in Galveston, Texas were informed that the Emancipation Proclamation was like 2 years earlier, and therefore they were free. So there's clearly a lot to unpack in all that, but I'll save that for next time if I do it at all. I mean, it's a holiday that has layers. Let's just say it that way. Now, regarding that video, if I go to the video list here of latest, ooh, it's up to 104 views. How about that? I didn't even realize. That's good. And especially for me, because it's like a 19-minute video and I don't make longer videos. You may have noticed here, it's got the same style of thumbnail as the Mastering Makito one on the in order method. I kind of like that purple background with the gradient in it and the colors and stuff. I mean, I've been told by many YouTubers that you really have to spend a lot of time and effort coming up with better thumbnails in general, that makes a huge difference. But I mean, I don't do anything on these weekly newsletter ones. What you see is what you get. But I am starting to update some of the older videos too to add a better thumbnail. I have no idea if it's going to make any difference. Like this one on spying on a logger, I changed the thumbnail on it, but I don't know if it changed anything about the response. You see, my old thumbnails were so simple. That's before I had Canva, and I just did everything in, believe it or not, Google Slides. Okay, back to what we were doing. So the other video I released was a YouTube short, which was called AssertJ is so beautiful. And I even had emoticons in the title and capital letters and all that silliness. And I really went for the emotions here, just pointing out that I had this beautiful, beautiful example of AssertJ tests for catching an exception. And it's more than that. It actually asserts that an exception happened and that it knows what the cause was and that it knows what the message was from that cause, all the way in just a couple of lines. I mean, I've been very taken with JUnit's ability to declare and catch exceptions and verify all that. But this was just a thing of beauty, and I therefore get all choked up and everything. So at any rate, if you want to see that, that's fine. Let's see how that one's doing. That's a short, of course. And here it is. That's got 134 views, which again is really good for me. So I'm happy about that. So, okay, back to what we were doing. The pattern I see emerging, I said in the newsletter, is that long-form videos tend to be relatively serious, containing solid information. Of course, there's a huge variation on that, and I probably could put more humor in mine, but oh well. While the shorts are mostly about connecting to emotions. Now that, I don't know, that's a tentative hypothesis, and I think I may have some learning to do, as I go along, learning better how these things work. I definitely feel that the problem with shorts is there's not really enough time to explain anything, and there's not enough screen real estate to show anything, code-wise anyway. I mean, you could talk about other things. There's some shorts I watch from some coders that do a really good job of this. I'm not sure I've mastered it yet. So I'm more aiming for the emotional side, just to have some fun with it, be a little bit silly or affronted or offended or whatever, just something like that, just to see what I can get at in that. And I imagine that will translate to the longer form videos. There are these tools out there. I tried one this week called vidyo.com, which will take your long form videos and try to create shorts out of them. But the mood and the structure and the layout is so different between the two. I haven't found anything that I consider at all useful out of that. Okay. The other YouTube activity I did is I held a live stream on the Tales from the Jar Side YouTube channel with my friend and colleague on the No Fluff Just Stuff tour, Nate Shuda. Nate works for VMware these days. He's one of their developer advocate team, and he has been a no-fluff speaker longer than I have, actually. His area these days is primarily architecture-faced. So he has a book called Thinking Architecturally, which, don't tell him, but I've never actually gotten around to reading, but I really ought to at some point. I'll get to it at some point. And we had a really good discussion. I mean, we really did have a lot of fun on that. Now, I did have to make a confession, by the way, which I'll tell all of you again. That thumbnail doesn't look bad. It's a completely different style than the other one, but it's not laid out well. And the reason I came up with a separate thumbnail at all is I realized that on my older presentations here, my older, YouTube live channel ones, I only put in the name of the speaker, the name of the guest, the picture of the guest. And my son's looking at these. My son, my unofficial, official social media consultant, looked at those and said, "Where's your picture?" And I said, "I'm the host. I mean, it's really all about them." And he's like, no, your picture should be in there. So I went, fine. So I went to make one of my own, and that's why I came up with this. The problem is when I went into Canva to look for a template to make a thumbnail for this sort of thing, I accidentally selected one that I thought looked good, but was for like Instagram or something. The layout was wrong. And when I went into StreamYard, the platform I used to do the streaming, and tried to load the resulting thumbnail, it cut off the whole bottom strip, which messed everything up. I'm like, uh-oh, what? And it said, yeah, the dimension should be this by this, whatever the numbers actually were. And I had to go and take this one I'd spent all this time on and resize it and then drag things around so that they were at least visible. But I'm not sure this combination of fonts and sizes and colors actually works anymore. So before I do the next one, I will try to fix that. Incidentally, I'm finding that trying to schedule a weekly webinar or live stream is just too frequent. It's just too hard to arrange schedules. If it was just me talking, I could do that, just like I do this newsletter. But trying to coordinate my schedule with somebody else's and see if they can get it all together is really challenging. So I don't know. I think every other week is going to be a much better opportunity. So look for another one 2 weeks from now. Okay, I think I did everything there, although I did point out that Nate has his own screencast, which is called Between Chair and Keyboard. Boy, that drives me crazy. I mean, I always learned it as the problem with your system is between the keyboard and chair, right? It's the person in between the keyboard and chair. Wait a minute. Yeah. Well, Nate learned it as between chair and keyboard, so he has this site, and it's hosted at Tanzu, which owns basically VMware. And you see, he did one today, and Sebastian Deleuze. I actually watched that one, and there's several others. They go back quite a ways, and I think you have to go back. Let's make that a little smaller. You have to go back a long time to find me. I'm in there. I think I was an early guest too, because I'm one of those people that because I don't have a normal job. So if he has a cancellation or needs somebody at the last minute, he says, "Are you around?" And if I'm around, it's like, sure, I'll jump on the channel. And it's fun. He likes to say that he created it mostly as an excuse to talk to his friends. And that's honestly probably as good an explanation as to why I have my newsletter and YouTube channel as well. Although I don't think I'm quite as social as he is, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, now, separate topic. I want to talk about a tool that I finally subscribed to, and isn't it just yet another subscription that I have not yet really seriously played with. I started, but there's a lot of, despite what they say, I have not found it as intuitive as some other people find it. This tool is called Descript. And did I seriously forget to put a link to Descript in here? Oh my goodness. Well, it's at descript.com, so that's not exactly difficult to infer. So here's Descript. I think making that wider doesn't help anything. And I'm not even sure I like the product tour, but the basic concept is that you drop a video in there and their AI transcribes it for you, but it's not just a transcription, it's a transcription that's connected to the actual video. So if you make a modification to the text in the transcription, it will actually modify the video. Now, not by changing a word or something like that, but if you delete a sentence or a paragraph, it will cut the video the same way. And therefore, the idea is this is a way of editing videos that's primarily text-based. You also put in those little forward slashes as a way to add, B-roll is what they call it, videos or images or other visual items, and switch between them automatically. And you could upload multiple videos and copy and paste out of them into the script, and it'll move things around and do all that for you. The other thing it has, and this is back to the newsletter, it has an AI tool that will automatically take out the so-called filler words from your script, words like and on. I'm pretty good about not doing that. Boy, if I could have it remove. On the other hand, or, there's some phrases that now that I've been recording these newsletters, I find I use far too often. At any rate, that's one of them. At any rate, there's one. Descript will remove those filler words for you, and then that will remove them from the video too. It also will take anything that is dead space longer than like 3 or 4 seconds and cut that down to 1 second. Now that burned me this week because I took the video I described at the top about the functional interfaces and loaded that into Descript. But when I did that shorten process, it cut out a couple of my nice little graphical intros because there was no sound around them. I had just didn't say anything during that time, and they got cut down to 1 second. I'm like, oh shoot. And I wasn't sure how to undo that. So I wound up not really using it for that particular video. I used the same Mac Whisperer for generating the subtitles that I've been using recently. And by the way, Mac Whisperer just had an upgrade as well. So I got to use the latest version of that. The other thing it does, and this is another one of its selling points, is this thing called overdub capability. So that I did have a link to. So the overdub capability will come up with, when you put in text that's not in the video, you can choose a voice model to speak that text. And they have a bunch in there. But the cool part is you can train it to have your voice in there. And I went through the training process. I actually uploaded one of my newsletter videos, and it trained itself on the 30 minutes or so of me talking, so that then it produced my own voice. And in an upcoming video sometime, I haven't really had a chance to use it. I tested it out on a sentence or two, and it sounded too much like me, actually, for my own comfort level. But I did it, and we'll see how it goes in the future. So that's another nice capability associated with Descript, is this overdub capability. The best thing, though, the thing that really attracted me to it, is that it not only can add captions to your video from those subtitles, not only can it add them, you can resize them and choose different fonts. You could make them wider or smaller so that you see 3 or 4 words at a time, or a dozen, whatever you like. And it even has something called karaoke mode, where as you speak or as the video progresses, it'll highlight each individual word as you go along. My sense is that's going to be really useful for shorts. I don't know how useful that'll be for long form videos. I am going to try it out with the captions for longer term videos, but the shorts, I think the karaoke mode is going to be great. I tried it again with that functional one. The problem I had mostly wasn't with the captions. It was with the transcription, because while it got regular words fine, it didn't know what to do with any of my technical terms. And especially when I referred to methods inside of Java, like assert does not throw or whatever, it made them 4 separate words, and of course didn't have the right camel case inside it. And I got tired of correcting all of those. I don't know. I'm, again, very new at this. It's yet another learning curve, but we'll see. Let's go on to something else now. So at any rate, that's coming, but I'm not done with it yet. This section is on all the tools and studying I've been doing lately about artificial intelligence. Partly I'm doing this because it's relevant to my field, and partly I'm doing this to prepare for a talk on the No Fluff Tour in the in the fall. Although I mentioned last week I'm going to do it at UberConf, so I've got about a month to put something together. So I said here, I've been spending a lot of time on various artificial intelligence related products. I may wind up adding a semi-regular section to this newsletter about them. One that I mentioned was Descript, which I've already told you the AI part of it, especially the overdub capability. But I also spent a lot of time with good old ChatGPT, and I downloaded a plugin called the ChatGPT sidebar. And the way this works is if I Google anything, like I'll say, let's, recent tools for converting text to voice, then you'll see that Google does its thing, but here's Cider spitting out the same stuff as though I had asked ChatGPT for it, because that's actually what it's doing. And I set it to use ChatGPT 3.5, which is the version that I have lots and lots of time on. With 4, I can set it to use 4, but then I have to keep logging in over and over again. So it looks like they brought up Google Cloud text-to-speech. I actually wouldn't expect ChatGPT to do very well on this because, again, ChatGPT 3.5 finished its training set summer of 2021, I think. So that everything's going to be dated if you ask it for something later. On the other hand, if I go to a YouTube video, and here I'll click on this, but I'm going to stop it right as soon as it starts talking. There's a little summarized video button that comes from there too. And if I click on that, then it tries to get the information and the key moments. I'm not exactly sure this is any better than what's included in the description anyway. I mean, I put in a little bit of description and I put in the time codes, and it's reproducing the time codes here. And I mean, that's a slight variation on what I said. So again, I'm not 100% convinced this is all that great, but what the heck, I'll give it a try. Okay. So I did that, and I'll keep playing with that and see how it works. That's exactly the sort of functionality, though, that eventually Google is going to replace with its Bard capabilities. Microsoft's Bing already has their ChatGPT built in that supposedly can access the internet and everything. I don't know. I've been very disappointed. Well, I haven't been disappointed. The problem with ChatGPT is mostly the timing, is that nothing's more up to date than a year ago. Whereas the disappointment with Bard is just the results I just haven't been impressed with anything I've seen out of Bard so far. I did give it a URL to one of my videos and asked it to assess the video, and it got a completely different video. And then I gave it the title, and it did a different video in my channel, at least. And then I asked it about my channel, and I don't know who they thought they were talking about, but it made up some amazing results. Anyway. Another thing I did is I actually dug into the Open API, the ChatGPT API. That looks like this. This is the Open API platform, so that there's the ability to add GPT inside your system, and there's one for image generation, which I think is the worst of all. And then there was one, the speech to text here, right? Basically, that Mac Whisper tool that I like is built on top of Whisper, which is another tool from OpenAPI. So my thought is maybe I can build an app that builds all these things in. And as it turns out, you really have to give them your credit card because they don't give you anything for free anymore. Now, on the other hand, the prices are in the hundreds or thousands of a cent. So I got it working, and it didn't really, I don't think it's cost me anything significant. Now, in order to use it, they have a RESTful web service. You could just do GET requests on a particular URL. But they had a link to the OpenAPI Java API. Again, I keep having to use that word. This is the library from somebody named Theo Canning robotics, machine learning, and Android engineer in Minneapolis. And the version's like 0.13. I'm like, oh yeah, oh good, another pre-1 release here. This actually has classes mapped to most of the open API responses, and then I think he uses retrofit inside to do the network connection. So it's not like I couldn't do this myself, but I figured I'd give it a try. I think I have the code. Let me run it. I think the problem is I did set the environment variable something. So I got back, somebody once told me the world is going to roll me. Somebody once said that war is over, but I still said, and then it cut off at that point. It's okay. It's nothing thrilling, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but it's a nice demonstration. So I'm going to eventually build something more interesting out of it and see what it is. I don't know what this is going to cost me. So far, I think it's only cost a few hundredths of a cent. So be it. Let's go back to the newsletter. Oh, one other thing. Two other things, actually. Right after I started setting everything up, then like Saturday, Josh Long, the Spring developer advocate, did a live stream demonstrating another plugin, a Spring Boot ChatGPT starter, which looks like this. So this is the ChatGPT Spring Boot starter that allows you to add ChatGPT capabilities to a Spring Boot application. You just set your key to openai.api.key in the application.properties file, and then you can go ahead and access the service. This one, I think, does email for some reason. He's got some functions in there. And then Josh Long did a live stream where he used this, and it took him I think he took about half an hour. Whoop, let's not do that one here. It took about half an hour to show it. And there's a link here to his live stream if you want to watch the recording. I didn't see it when it happened because he was in Malaysia. It was like 2 a.m. or something. But I did watch the recording, and it's solid. But it gives you an idea what this is going to be like. Again, this is an API that is in very early stages of development. We'll see how that expands over time. The last thing I mentioned here is I subscribed to another newsletter, but this one's free, called the Neuron. Let's see if I can open that up, or Neuron, however. And here's some past issues, talking about plugins, talking about what's going on in the community, and it's daily. It comes out every single day. So it's short, but it's interesting, and they do also maintain a list of top tools or whatever, which I imagine changes on a regular basis. I'll give it a try, see how that goes. Let me close a bunch of these windows. So a lot of AI related stuff this week that took my time. On a completely unrelated note, I was watching a video by one of the guys I admire, by Dan Vega. And Dan Vega was talking about the HTTP interfaces in Spring Boot. His YouTube channel is at Dan Vega, right? I think it's just one word. Yeah, so here's his channel, and he's got a couple of recent ones. This one on how to add request headers using the HTTP interfaces, and this one on the overall HTTP interface clients. I haven't watched all of that. I have watched this one. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because he used a service I had never used, and it's this one, actually this one here, called JSON Placeholder. JSON Placeholder is a fake API just for testing and prototyping. So what it does, let me just scroll down to the endpoints. These are the available endpoints, posts and comments and albums and photos and to-dos and users. And if I go to posts, for example, you see that this is a collection of 100 post instances with a user ID, an ID, a title, a body, and the body is just some generic Latin there. but it supports not just GET requests, which is what I usually do in my demo, because if you're working with a publicly available RESTful web service, they most all simply accept GET requests. This one supports post and put and patch and delete. It seems that it restores the database in between each request. So I don't know how they do that, although I mean, it's not like I couldn't find out. They have a GitHub repository where you could actually look at it. But it seems like it's perfect for the sorts of demos that I like to do in class or just experimenting with HTTP clients. So I did, in fact, write a system for this. Right, this is my HTTP interfaces demo. I put in 2 separate tests. One, to use my web test client from Spring directly. So this is a built-in client inside of Spring Boot, although it's from the reactive part, the web flux module. And I did a get, a couple of gets, and a post, and a put, and a delete, just to check that things worked the way I expected. Like some places they didn't. Like the delete, I thought it would return a no content in the response, but in fact it returned a 200 okay. Yeah, okay, there's subtleties like that. And then I went to my HTTP interfaces, which are here. And I just, again, added my interface methods. It's really simple as a way to add them. This is all part of Spring Boot, and wrote a test that accessed the different endpoints using that service with the interfaces and let Spring Boot generate the implementation class with all the web client code inside it. And I have the same tests here as you saw in the other one pretty much. And it took some doing to get them to work right, but they did eventually work. And as I mentioned in the exercise or in the newsletter, I did put everything in my GitHub repository in case you want to see it or you want to use it or reuse it or whatever. Dan is obviously more proficient at this than I am. He's got the details. I'd recommend watching his videos after you watch this one, if you like, in order to see how that works. I may put together my own video on the same topic, but if I do, it will rest on the foundation that Dan goes through in detail, and I'll make sure to reference him as well. I should also, in the spirit of honesty here, I should mention the first place I saw that stuff, the HTTP interfaces, was in a video by Craig Walls, the author of the Spring in Action book. And he has a video as well, which covers that among other things. So I just didn't happen to include it in the newsletter, but don't forget about that too. I think it's time to go to our tweets and toots at last. Okay, this was quite an eclectic week for tweets and toots. This one is a Twitter feed that I really like called JRR Jokin, right, instead of Tolkien. The nice picture of the fellowship saying, "My friends and all our dads listening to the laser tag employee give the instructions." And it does look remarkably like that. I can think we've all been there. But this one I also really liked. He tweeted, "If you replace the members of the Fellowship of the Ring one by one with other characters of the same race and relative ability, e.g. swap Faramir for Boromir, how long would it take before it's no longer the Fellowship of the Ring?" And I call this question the Fellowship of Theseus. So it's a Lord of the Rings Ship of Theseus joke. And boy, that's not something you hear all the time. Now, to address that more seriously, that's like a sports team where you keep swapping out players. In other words, it's the Fellowship of the Ring as long as there are a group of people all pursuing it, in my opinion. I mean, just like the Boston Red Sox are still the Red Sox even without Mookie Betts, which I'm still angry about, that they let him go for nothing. Greatest player they've had in generations, and they went, no, we can't afford to pay him even though we're one of the richest teams at baseball. Okay, that I won't get too far off on that rant. But it's the same team, Is it the same team when the managers change? Of course. Is it the same team when the general managers change? Yeah. Is it the same team when the owners change? Sure. Is it the same team when it moves? Well, I don't know. I guess we'll find out when the Oakland A's wind up moving to Vegas and presumably change their name. It's probably telling that I refer to the Indianapolis NFL team as the Baltimore Colts. So that's probably a clue in where I fall on all this. Let's move on. Liminal spaces. Now, this is a term I'd heard before, but really knew nothing about. Natalie Wynn, who is known by the handle ContraPoints, as you see here in her Twitter feed, makes these videos once a month on her Patreon channel called Tangents. My tangent on liminal spaces, she wrote, is live on Patreon. You can watch the full 80-minute ramble about low-definition images of hallways now for the low price of $2. What a deal. Now, I'm already a Patreon supporter of hers. I'm very happy to help her out. I've learned so much from her over the years. Well, she's very, very intelligent. I think she doesn't realize sometimes how smart she really is. And she gave this wonderful discussion about a topic I'd barely even heard of. I put a little tiny summary here saying that liminal spaces, and this was kind of from the Wikipedia page, are the places, quote, in between, like a tunnel or a corridor, that, as it said, portray empty or abandoned places that appear eerie, forlorn, or often surreal, which is really an aesthetic, I think they continually refer to it as. Of course, she knew the literature. She quoted all these books on the topic and connected the ideas to many fields, philosophy, of course, architecture, obviously, and that feeling of being in a transitional place in your own life and in this empty space as a path between where you were to where you are. I really thought it was a fascinating talk, and the time just flew by. If you get a chance to see it or sponsor her in order to see it, I do recommend it. So once again, it's ContraPoints, and I do have a link to her Patreon here. Yes, I do have a link in the newsletter. Okay. Next one. You may have been aware that there was a major accident on I-95 outside of Philadelphia. Now, I spent a lot of my youth in York, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour and a half to 2 hours west of Philadelphia. But my sister lives in the Philadelphia area to this day. She's slightly west of Pennsylvania. And therefore, I've been down there many times, and I talk about it. Well, there was a truck that got caught under an underpass, and it caught on fire. There's some kind of explosion, and it destroyed the underpass above it because apparently bridges are not designed to handle fire very well. And it even destroyed part of the northbound lane. This is on the southbound side. So it wiped out both sides. And you cannot imagine the traffic disruption as a result of that. I mean, from what I gather, I think they say somewhere between 130 and 150,000 vehicles a day traverse that stretch of highway. I mean, it's incredible. And of course, that could be out for months. But the governor tweeted this live stream, and here I think I can actually start. Oh no, and now I can see the live stream going. You can actually watch the construction efforts as they're rebuilding this thing. The I-95 live stream, you believe it? So this is, I don't know what the actual direct URL is other than this. It's a Twitter broadcast. So you can leave it on in the background or whatever. I'm going to cut it off, but let's get rid of that too. At any rate, I put a link in there. According to the governor in this AP report, Associated Press, I-95 will be reopened in as little as 2 weeks. I find that incredible if it's even remotely true, but we'll see. So I'm glad I don't drive anywhere near the place. Our weekly examination of the trials and tribulations of Twitter. Fortunately, I didn't have to get into any of Elon's silliness this week. It turned out, however, that Rod Hilton is a former Twitter employee, and he put up a Mastodon thread of toots that tells the fascinating story of when they built or acquired, no, they built a second building as they were growing, and then they never stopped doing the project. Even though the headcount was going down, the revenues were going down, they couldn't afford it, they weren't going to use it. And then, of course, Elon took over and stopped paying for it, stopped paying for anything. And that, in fact, the response when they had their, quote, grand opening from most of the Twitter employees who were work from home at that point was, nobody ever canceled that project? Really? We're work from home now. And even though Elon doesn't support work from home, still nobody was going to go to that building, especially because he stopped paying the rent like he does. So at any rate, it's a fantastic series of toots that I do recommend. It's a very interesting story. So I just put the first one here, and I think this is linked to the rest of them. Yeah, so you could actually read it if you want. So I do recommend that, and it was quite a story. It's a reminder that Twitter was badly managed long before Elon took over, and as usual, he made things worse because that's what he does. We'll come back to him. That brings us to the Reddit rebellion. I didn't mention this in the title. I probably should have said something about it. Anybody reading this newsletter is probably aware of it, but if not, if you're not in the IT industry, you may never have heard of Reddit. Reddit's another one of those social media sites that's organized into discussion groups. An ancestor would be the old Usenet groups, or even, I don't know, what else would be a good analogy? Even ICQ, I suppose. I mean, there were actually, it kind of feels like old CompuServe groups or Genie and stuff. There were lots of discussions in there. It's kind of a wild place. They don't do much content moderation. Actually, the way moderation is done is individual, quote, subreddits elect their own moderators. So the moderation policies can vary widely from subreddit to subreddit. And there's a subreddit on almost anything that you might be interested in. Well, the reason I'm bringing it up is I also read an interesting series of toots about the difference between the words business and industry. Industry is when people cooperate to coordinate building a product that adds value to users. And that's industry. And business is basically erecting barriers to that so that people have to pay in order to get access. So when they talk about barriers to entry or building a moat around your business, that's all business. Industry is the actual production of something. Now, you may or may not agree with the definitions, but it really comes up when you deal with a site like Reddit. Because what's going on with Reddit is the owner, whose name I'm blanking on, but I don't want to mention him anyway, very annoying guy, decided to start charging a fortune for access to the Reddit data, their API, which used to be wide open and led to the creation of many very good third-party clients to browse Reddit. Well, he decided to charge so much that he basically wanted to put them all out of business. Now, the question was, did he do this because he wanted to make money? Did he do this because he wanted to put them out of business? Well, rumor has it that, the plan is to have an IPO fairly soon, and he needs to show profits. And in order to build up that money, let's charge all this money and see what we can get. Anybody we can't get, we put out of business, and then fine, we'll start charging ourselves. And this is a classic business versus industry move, because he's acting like just because he owns the platform, he owns all the data. He didn't contribute any of that data. I mean, he may post things occasionally, but the vast majority of that data is from people who just want to have a discussion and are posting information without thinking about whether it's going to be financially advantageous or not. They're certainly not getting paid for adding data. It's like Facebook that way, that people post and they want people to post, or Twitter for that matter, and he wants to sell it. So he wants to make money off of it, and suddenly they've got a commodity. Now, the problem is, as Casey Newton was great talking about this in her Platformer newsletter, is that Reddit has a foundation of volunteered moderators who aren't getting paid anything, or doing it all for the little bits of power they get by moderating a subreddit. Some of them let it go to their head, some of them don't, but it's still all volunteer work. And they didn't like this. I mean, it looked at first like all the moderation tools they use too were going to get blocked as well, because most of those are third-party tools. He backed down from that pretty quickly. But they still hated the whole thing, and a few thousand of them got together and said, no, we're making our subreddits private, meaning they went dark. Now, they did it arguably the wrong way. In order to coordinate it, they announced what dates they were going dark and how long they were going dark. Like for 48 hours, we were going dark on such and such a day, and therefore the owner knew all I got to do is wait it out and they'll all be back. I mean, there's no real pressure on them, just the fact that they're gone for 48 hours expressing their displeasure. And for a tech bro who only cares about money, that's nothing. Well, once they realized that, because the guy was like Elon in the sense that he couldn't stop talking, and he gave an interview and basically announced to the world that, yeah, we're just going to wait him out. We don't care. It's just internet drama. Don't worry about it. Of course, then the moderators viewed that as an insult and decided to extend the blackout indefinitely. Well, you can't do that to the owner because the owner ultimately does have the power. And the owner tried to replace some of the moderators of the bigger channels, but that's not so easy. You tried to hold an election to get the people to replace the moderators that want to block it with ones who are willing to open it up. And of course, that didn't work. So then he just started declaring he's going to open them up automatically, whether they want them open or not, and get rid of the moderators. The reason I mention this, in addition to the fact it's just interesting, is that we got a great toot about it. This is a response to a response. And it said, in response to threats to forcibly remove moderators if subreddits don't reopen, r/pics, one of the most popular subreddits out there, I think it's got like 20 million subscribers, polled its users and has chosen to reopen after changing its rules to allow only sexy pics of John Oliver, the news broadcaster with his own show on the former HBO, now Max. Malicious compliance at its finest. Way to go, fam. That's a Reddit protest. I thought that was awesome. The biggest observation, of course, is that the owner here, and before I say that, he also gave an interview where he points out that he admires Elon and even is impressed with the steps Elon has taken at Twitter, which should disqualify him from anything, ever, for running anything, heck, for being considered a reasonable, rational human being, really. And the one thing he and Elon clearly have in common is both tech bros, the worst of tech bros, are taking what were considered to be flawed but valuable assets and doing their best to burn both to the ground. So we'll see how it plays out. Moving on. Here was a chess joke. I love this. Okay, let's see you walk a straight line. And of course, that's a knight. So it goes up 2 squares and over 1. And walking a straight line is going to be a problem. Here's a seriously dated reference that I imagine most of you will get immediately. It says, all I'm saying is, at any point during that ride through the desert, he could have given that horse a name. Yeah, been through the desert on a horse with no name. I put in a complication is that in the desert, you can't remember your name because there ain't no 1-4 to give you no pain. And now try getting that song out of your head for the next couple hours. Good old America way back. Okay. Speaking of dated jokes, this is the adventures of Admiral Snack Bar. Somebody saying, is that a burrito? It's a wrap. Yes. Very good. In case you don't get it, there's a link to Know Your Meme about Admiral Akbar, and it's a trap and all of that. Last week, I did a whole bunch of echoes of posts about the boxes in the bathroom situation. I didn't see this one. It was posted, but I hadn't caught up on Twitter that day before the newsletter went out. This was a great one. I just had to include it here. It's a restroom sign with a woman or a man, and in the men's side, of course, you have boxes as well. So I guess the boxes use the men's side. Presented without further comment other than say, get the popcorn ready. Of course, if I'm going to do a Star Wars gag, I ought to do a Star Trek one. So this came up this week as well. I don't know who the original source of this is, but it's wonderful. It's from an old Star Trek original series episode. I didn't even have to look it up. That's the Gamesters of Triskelion. And Kirk, who's trying to seduce the alien babe, as one does apparently, says that second one on the left, that's Earth. That's where you'll raise our daughter, Lady Gaga. And that fits her with her skimpy outfit ready to fall apart at any moment and big green hair. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, no doubt. Explains a lot. Although some things have just not aged well out of the original series, and that's one of them. Okay, and then finally, one in honor of Pride Month, there was this great snapshot of a chat between a kid and his mother. Mother saying, "Can you come out?" And he says, "Yeah, give me a minute. Mom, I'm gay." And she replied, "I know that, silly. Come out to the car." So the response, of course, is, "Car, I'm gay." A dad joke. Oh, wait, I forgot. A dad joke if I ever saw one, right? I'm assuming the car was good with it. Cars are pretty good like that. Have a great week, everybody. So this week I did the functional Java course as a no fluff, just stuff virtual workshop, and my Mockito and the Hamcrest Matchers course, which was fun to do. I added in a section on AssertJ, which is the testing library I really like these days. I also did week 3 of my Spring and Spring Boot in 3 weeks course, which was fun as well. This week I only have the Reactive Spring course, and it's in the APAC time zone, so that'll be, I think, Wednesday evening. Thank you very much. I know I went on for a long time on this one, but hopefully you'll find it valuable, and I will see you all next week. Take care.